Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We have a very packed agenda today. I know some folks are still working through the food line, but we're going to go ahead and get started so we can get to everything. So welcome to the 2019 Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce State of Missoula Address. I'm Will Johnson, Financial Advisor with Farm Bureau Financial Services, and I have the privilege of being the Chairman of the Board for the Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce. Would you please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As chairman of your Missoula Chamber of Commerce, I am proud of the attention and focus the Chamber is bringing forward on the many issues that create barriers in our workforce. I am going to touch on a couple of these issues and provide a quick update on the progress that your Missoula Area Chamber of Commerce is making to move Missoula forward. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors for today's event, Neptune Aviation as our title sponsor, and Blue Cross Blue Shield as our silver sponsor. And as title sponsor for today, I'd like to invite to the stage Ron Hooper, CEO of Neptune Aviation, to say a few words.
This is always dangerous, and some of you have heard this, but my wife always says, if you give Ron a microphone and an audience, he'll go on forever. So Will cautioned me again before he came up here that I've only got a few minutes. And don't let this scare you, it's just a bunch of notes concerning other business, but I made a few notes on here I wanted to share. Can everybody hear me? No. Can you hear me back there? Okay. Let me speak up a little louder and bring that a little closer. Is that better? Yeah. Great. I am in no way an expert in the subject of today's presentation and this most august board up here, or panel, but I wanted to share a few thoughts as a Missoula businessman and how we feel or how we have operated in an environment of recruitment and retention, and just some thoughts I have about community involvement in this discussion topic. And Mike Fow, who is our Director of Security out at Neptune, is at our table, and if I say anything wrong, he'll probably throw a fork at me or something. But let me try to get this right. And Neptune does have a very specific, detailed, in the handbook, drug and alcohol policy. It's an appropriate policy concerning the business we're in. Much of it's dictated by the Department of Transportation or the FAA, what has to be in there. But so, we are aware of some of the challenges in the workplace around this subject. My personal view is there's three aspects to dealing with as a community: education, prevention, treatment, and probably a fourth one, assimilation back into the community. Part of that is a business responsibility. I like to talk about the subject in the context of, I go back to the root of our values, and that's the family. The family has to be engaged in this conversation. The churches, the schools, all have a role, and I'm not suggesting that churches and schools ought to raise my children, but they certainly have an influence on my children. Local governments, obviously, law enforcement have a role in this topic, as well as state and federal government. So I had an opportunity to speak to a group of timber operators and folks who deal with timber and the products that come out of that a couple months ago, and I gave them my opinion on the subject as well. So let me give you my opinion on how I think as a community we could and ought to be approaching this subject and this concern. One, I think we need to increase visibility. What are the issues and concerns associated with the subject? And today we're talking specifically about assimilating back into the work environment, I believe. Understanding the source of the problems, is it associated with lack of self-esteem? Is it peer pressure? Is it depression? Is it frustration of not being able to be successful in a field I think I should be? And then coming together as a coalition in the community of business people, law enforcement, obviously, the mental health officials, the clergy in our churches. My point is, it's not any one entity's responsibility to address these concerns. And that coalition could come together and then form a strategy, a community strategy, on how all these players can come together to support one another in trying to accomplish the goals that are set forth. And then identify and develop the resources needed to implement that strategy. So I guess my message is, in keeping it brief, it's more than you and I that need to participate in addressing this concern. It's the community as a whole, whether we talk about the homes, the churches, the schools, the businesses, the law enforcement community. All of us have a role, and we need to recognize that and recognize what the problem is and recognize potential solutions and then help in carrying that out. Thank you. Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. And again, thank you, Neptune Aviation and Blue Cross Blue Shield of Montana for their support of today's event. Recently, I was fortunate enough to attend Business Days at the Capitol there in Helena, which coincides with the kickoff of the 2019 legislative session. Business leaders from across the state heard from our local, state, and national representatives, and a common theme emerged out of this, which was the workforce, labor shortage. And you've all heard about the national and local coverage, lack of skilled labor that's available across the country, and Missoula is certainly no exception to this. To that end, we are proud of the work that we are doing as your voice of business for the Missoula community through the Chamber. Chamber leadership has been engaged in all aspects of workforce. And before we dive deeper into the addiction and the workforce issue, I would like to highlight a couple of other initiatives that pertain to workforce and then mention the progress that's being made to move Missoula forward. The first initiative is focused on creating pathways to education and training for our future workforce. We've identified a disconnect between businesses and education sector when it comes to preparing our workers for the future. And the Chamber has partnered with the Missoula County Public Schools to create an event designed to give school counselors a better understanding of jobs and careers in various industry sectors. Our goal is to partner with the school counselors on a wide variety of career pathways that could be available to students while providing a favorable public relations opportunity for participating businesses. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge some key players who have donated their time to move this collaborative forward. I know a few are in attendance today. We have Mark Thane, Superintendent of Missoula County Public Schools, Elise Guest, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning, and Casey Dernberger, Career and Technology Education Coordinator and Computer Applications Teacher. I know Elise and Casey are here with us today. Oh, and there's Mark. This event will take place on February 11th and will be recorded by MCAT. There is an informational card at your table with all the details. If you are interested in participating, please connect with the Chamber. At our September banquet, I invited and encouraged businesses to connect and engage with our Chamber. And I'm asking that again of you today. This is a tremendous opportunity for us to empower and equip the next generation of our workforce, as well as taking a significant step in improving our workforce. In addition to this collaboration with our local schools, the Chamber has established a channel to connect potential employees with employers in our area through a resume submission portal on the Chamber website. If you haven't checked out our website and this portal, I encourage you to do so later today. The second initiative that the Chamber has been working on and addressing is the lack of availability and affordability in childcare, which is a main component in workforce. While I have personally recognized the child care need in our community and that it was crucial, that was a distant view until I became the father of 2 young children. This issue hits squarely in my life, and I see firsthand how difficult it is to find that affordable, quality child care for our children. The Chamber recently sent out a survey. It was sent out to member businesses to gauge the need and to diagnose exactly what can be done. And the results from over 550 respondents clearly illustrate that our community cares deeply about this issue. Now, the formal results are still being analyzed, and there will be more information coming forward as this issue develops. In addition to identifying and quantifying the need, work has been underway and will continue for over the next year or two to explore several models that can come forward to address the child care need in our community. One of the strongest things we've done was a roundtable with several large employers that really spurred dialogue and conversation and really identified 5 to 6 models that could work in our community, and we continue to pull on the thread to explore those. I'll briefly run through them, but the first model would be to create a child care facility that is housed within a business for their employees. Now, that's not a new model nationwide, but it's certainly something that's being explored locally. And we've received confirmation that at least one large employer is planning to construct this model in the very near future and house 40 to 50 children, which will in turn open up spots in other facilities around town. A second model is for the potential of a current facility to expand and allowing an additional 220 kids. One large corporation and a current landowner have been meeting to discuss this expansion and check into its viability. Model 3 is a collaborative between 2 or more businesses to partner up, combining efforts to create a child care facility for their sector or part of town. 2 large employers have been connected through the Chamber's efforts and will collaborate with other businesses in their vicinity to test this viability. Another option would be to utilize available and vacant buildings as child care facilities. The Chamber has discussed this possibility of long-term leases with Missoula County Public Schools, and conversations are taking place. It certainly makes sense to potentially utilize current resources to their full potential. The fifth model would be to incorporate child care facilities into existing or future developmental projects in certain parts of town. And the last would be to connect the child care center to large retail areas such as Southgate Mall. Now, I want to be clear. The Chamber is not in the business of running daycares. We are simply facilitating conversations and connecting key players in this arena. We are excited about the YMCA's expansion efforts and support any and all work being done that leads to an increase in availability and affordability of child care in our community. I would like to take a moment, acknowledge, and thank those who have collaborated thus far on this child care initiative, several in attendance today as well. We have Mark Roberts from Missoula Early Learning, Todd Shaper and Randy Rupert of CTA Architects, Kelly Rosenleaf, Child Care Resources, Margaret McManus, Allegiance Benefit Plan Management, Susan Haypatrick, United Way, Scott Eichner, Montana Department of Labor, and again, Mark Thane. Would everybody please stand to be recognized? And we appreciate your efforts on this. As you can see, we've been busy. And I had to lean pretty heavy on my notes today because I didn't want to leave anyone or anything out, which undoubtedly I still did. But as we transition to our third initiative, which is our main topic of today's State of Missoula, addiction in the workforce. We're grateful to have a panel of experts with us here today to discuss the serious implications this issue has on our employees, our coworkers, our employers, our families, and our community at large. This issue is often not talked about or viewed as taboo. So I'd like to thank everyone who has given of their time, talent, and voice to spotlight this issue and to bring it forward. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our MC for today, who will run the panel discussion, Clint Burson, the Missoula Chamber of Commerce Director of Government Affairs. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Before I introduce our first speaker, I do want to kind of highlight how we're going to do questions and answers a little bit differently this year. Given the sensitivity of the topic, we've decided that we want to add in a layer of anonymity to some of the questions, because some of you may have a question that's kind of sensitive to you and you don't necessarily want to share it with the whole group. So what we're going to do is we'll be collecting those questions via email. You'll see it up here on the screens. You just email questions@missoulachamber.com. I'll collect those throughout the presentation, and then at the end we'll present some of those questions to our panel and let them answer the questions. So first, let me introduce our first speaker. He's come all the way over from Helena today. We're really happy to have him. It's Attorney General Tim Fox. Tim Fox was born and raised in Hardin, Montana. He attended Hardin Public Schools, graduated from Hardin High School, and is a 3-time graduate of the University of Montana. Go Grizz. He's practiced law for more than 30 years, starting as a law clerk for the Montana Supreme Court Justice L.C. Gulbranson. After practicing in both private and the public sectors, he was elected Montana's 24th Attorney General in 2012 and then re-elected in 2016. Attorney General Fox has worked to strengthen Montana's human trafficking laws, improved law enforcement's response to sexual assault crimes, increased investments in drug interdiction and combating substance abuse, has defended Montana's legal interests in state and federal court, and has expanded public access as a member of the State Land Board. He and his wife Karen have 4 children and 6 grandchildren, and like I said, he drove all the way over from Helena this morning in the snow, so please welcome Attorney General Tim Fox.
Thanks, Clint, and thank you all for being here. It was quite a white-knuckle drive on the way over here, but like most Montanans, you just leave a lot of time, right? So I left very, very early, and it was okay. And I really appreciated seeing a lot of our highway patrol troopers out on the road very early in the morning, making sure that things are safe, that we're safe. It's a great blessing to be your Attorney General. One of the primary reasons for that is that I get to work with law enforcement every day. And so if you know someone in law enforcement, and there's a few of them here today in the audience and on the panel, I hope you'll take the time to thank them, encourage them. It's not an easy job. Just a couple of days ago, I gave testimony on a bill, House Bill 156, that would name a portion of Highway 287 in memorial to Deputy Sheriff Mason Moore of Broadwater County, who was killed in the line of duty in 2017. He's a hero. He was a hero in life. He's a hero in death. We should never forget the men and women in law enforcement, our first responders in the fire service, dispatchers, all those that run to trouble when the rest of us are running away. And I completely digressed from my prepared remarks just because I felt moved to bring that up this morning. So again, yeah, thank you. Well, hello, Missoula, and go Grizz. Yeah, I like that. Thanks for inviting me to be here and spend some time with you today. And I always enjoy coming back to town, this town that was my home for many years. Not unlike John Belushi, if some of you know what I'm talking about. Are there somebody know that? Okay. Many years, obviously, in college and of course, law school, and I had the great privilege last year of finishing my master's degree. Well, I sat for chemotherapy after colon cancer, and I often, again, I'm digressing once more, but I know this works because I tell folks now, get your screenings, get your health screenings. I had a call from an individual who I won't name who said he heard me speak at an event, and so he went and got his health screening, and lo and behold, he also found colon cancer. Very early stage. He is going to breeze through that and not have a problem. But if it wasn't for survivors who talk about their experience and encourage others to do the right thing and take care of themselves, there may not have been that kind of an outcome. So please get your health screenings, talk to your health care providers about a plan. If you have any history of ailments in your family, it's very important that you get that done, because as we're going to discuss in this panel here today, we got a lot of work to do, folks, and we can't do it if we're having to deal with health issues. So let's get that done and focus on then working together. So chambers of commerce, service organizations, and other community-focused groups are my favorite to speak with for a very simple but very powerful reason. You are uniquely vested in the life and vitality of your community. You know the struggles, the talents, the strengths, the unique needs of your community better than anyone. You live here, raise your families here, and work to make Missoula thrive. Across Montana, communities large and small face different challenges as they endeavor to grow their local economies and improve the quality of life for their citizens. Among those challenges, we can find some common themes, one of them being substance abuse. Large cities, small towns, urban, rural, wealthy, poor, middle class, young and old, men and women, substance abuse strikes everywhere. If you ask law enforcement officers who work patrol and investigate crimes, scratch the surface of so many crimes against persons and property today, and you'll find drug-related activity involved in some way. The statistics over the last few years here in Montana make it clear that we are facing a crisis. Meth and heroin violations are up significantly. I just told someone this morning that meth-related violations are up 500% in our state. That is an epidemic. That is a crisis. The crime lab right here in Missoula, and if you've not been to the crime lab, contact my office and we'll set up a tour. They have seen an explosion in samples testing for positive for meth and heroin, 143% increase in just the last 3 years. The number of infants born with neonatal abstinence syndrome has grown significantly. And we are working, by the way, on a bill, a safe harbor bill for women, because we need to address the issue and give them the opportunity to seek the help they need without fear of incarceration or having their children taken away from them. Nearly 2/3 of the placements in Montana's foster care system involve a parental substance abuse issue. Of those cases, meth accounts for almost half. All of this causes significant upward pressure on Montana's state budget. More children involved with child and family services, a greater caseload moving through our judicial system, growing populations in our corrections facilities. The list goes on and on and on. With each additional dollar spent on these reactive services comes a reduction in valuable resources elsewhere. And I don't have to tell you that these things impact businesses, your businesses. More than a few small business owners have told me that they have trouble finding employees who show up to work on time consistently and who show up sober. The financial and economic toll is staggering in and of itself, but it pales in comparison to the horror stories of lives affected by substance abuse. It's the little boy and girl who will never know their mother or father because of an overdose or homicide. It's the parents who lost a child to drug-related violence. The ripple effects of dangerous drugs touch each of our lives in one form or another. Montana can no longer afford to treat this problem as an isolated problem or as someone else's problem. This is our problem. Likewise, our responses can no longer be compartmentalized. As Attorney General, I know that enforcement can and must continue to play an important role. The vast majority of meth in Montana comes from Mexico. Believe it or not, it is produced in such quantities and in such purity there, it is cheaper to smuggle it all the way to Montana than to make it in small-scale labs here. Interdiction has been a priority for the Montana Department of Justice on my watch, and I have continually urged the federal government to increase security at the ports of entry along our nation's borders. But enforcement alone isn't enough. Supply is only one side of the problem. We must address the demand. Treatment for addiction and prevention efforts must be strengthened throughout the silos of government across the line separating public and private sectors. Recognizing this, I launched an initiative in 2017 called AID Montana. AID stands for AID, addressing the impact of drugs, but it's not just drugs, it's alcohol as well. This is a collaborative effort led by my office to bring as many key people and groups to the table as we can to encourage and change the conversation about substance use and disorders in our state. We're evaluating the issues, which needs to be done because this is a crisis. We are also working across the aisle, across the boundaries of office holders, and across jurisdictions to advance legislative and policy changes. We are looking at all facets of substance abuse in our state, from excessive alcohol consumption and prescription drug abuse to use of illicit drugs such as meth and heroin. AID Montana is looking at all of it. Now, much of this process is about understanding what we know and what we don't know. For example, we know that the Department of Corrections has programs to address and assist inmates addicted to substances. We know that the Department of Public Health and Human Services has programs to treat Montanans battling addiction. We know that schools across the state try extremely hard to educate students about the dangers of abusing drugs and alcohol. We know that the judicial system has procedures in place to identify and address crimes fueled by substance abuse and addiction. And we know that the Montana Department of Justice has a variety of law enforcement programs in place to combat the effects of substance use disorders. But what we don't know is how all of these programs can work together in the most efficient and effective manner. We don't know where tasks are being duplicated. We don't know what data each of these agencies utilizes to guide policy and practice. So the long-term goal of Aid Montana is to break down those silos and bridge the gaps between the agencies. The system in place to help those with substance use problems in Montana should function, I believe, as a well-oiled machine with all the parts synchronized, working together through consistent and effective communication, operating as a sophisticated apparatus. And to do this, we need everyone on the same page. It is all hands on deck. That's what we're working toward. As we speak, legislators from your community and throughout Montana are in Helena debating a wide range of issues. And as citizens, we ask a lot of them. In just 90 legislative days every other year, they're supposed to hammer out a 2-year state budget and consider legislation on every issue imaginable. So the next time you get a chance, thank each of them, even if you disagree with them on an issue. It's grueling work. The days are long. They spend long stretches without seeing their families or away from their businesses. And they're not there for a paycheck, and it's not glamorous work. So ulterior motives are always possible, but I do believe that most legislators are there because they care about our communities and they care about our state. I believe this about legislators even when we might disagree on issues. This session I brought forward a number of substance abuse bills that I believe legislators can and should unite around. And if you've ever heard me speak before, I like to visit with folks about the fact that in my 3 legislative sessions as your Attorney General, we have brought 40 bills. We have 12 in this session, but 40 in the past. Half of those I've asked Democrats to carry. Half I've asked Republicans to carry. Now someone asks, well, why would you do that? I want passionate people who are committed to make a change, to make sure that Montana continues to be the last best place. I don't care who they are or what they stand for, as long as they stand for Montana. And we have passed all 40 of those bills, and they've all been signed by the governor and made into law because they're common sense approaches to the issues that we face and things that we can agree on. And that's what we should be about, is finding things that we can agree on and getting it done. So the law enforcement community knows that for many offenders, treatment courts are an effective alternative to incarceration. We need more of these, and we need to prioritize their funding. Yet Montana relies almost exclusively on federal dollars for these essential tools. I have a bill to fix that problem and create an additional funding stream for Montana's drug treatment courts and prevention so that there won't be so many waiting lists, so that every county, every jurisdiction has that available for its citizens. Along those same lines, I'm working with county prosecutors to create a diversion program for first-time drug offenders. Rather than linger in backlogged court systems, there are many offenders who would benefit from getting into treatment early. Early intervention is a key. I'm reaching outside the purview of my own agency to dialogue with the Department of Public Health and Human Services to create some sort of safe harbor, as I've mentioned, for pregnant mothers. The reality is that many pregnant mothers who are addicted to drugs or alcohol don't seek treatment for fear of losing their children. Can we find ways to get them help without losing custody? That's the question. I want to work with all of folks that will come together to the table to address this issue. To address prescription opioid abuse, I have brought a bill that would put in place a number of important safeguards to curb abuse and protect legitimate medical use. The bill that we have proposed requires medical providers to use Montana's prescription drug registry before prescribing certain substances to prevent doctor shopping that can lead to overdoses and diversion. Right now, the registry is voluntary. It's the standard of care is what medical providers, any medical providers in the room, they're telling me that the standard of care now is mandatory use of the prescription drug registry. So let's put it into law. In certain circumstances, first-time opioid prescriptions would be limited to what we have suggested is a 5-day supply. We're in dialogue with the Montana Medical Association, Montana Hospital Association. We think we've come to an agreement that 7 days is something that we can get past. But what we know is, from the statistics and the science and the information is that the larger the prescription, the longer you have those, the more apt you are to become addicted. We're not trying to prevent anyone from having the prescription that they need, but we want to make sure that we're thinking about it and that there are limits, with some exceptions, on first-time opioid-based prescription drugs. Identification and verification requirements would be tightened so as to prevent forged prescriptions. Now, that may go by the wayside as a part of the negotiations. What we're calling is e-scripts. Many of the paper prescriptions are stolen, altered, misplaced, you name it. And in this day and age, where everybody in the room probably has a smart device, there's no reason why we can't do this electronically and avoid diversion. But that may have to wait for another day. And so while illegal drugs play a significant role in Montana's substance abuse crisis, alcohol addiction remains a major cause of fatalities and a drain on public resources. Research clearly shows that by the time a person has been cited for a second or third DUI, he or she has most likely been driving under the influence repeatedly. I've been fighting for changes to Montana's DUI laws since I first took office, and it is always an uphill battle. It's not simply a battle against DUI, but also against misconceptions and a culture that often sees DUIs as harmless. The battle will continue this session. Montana's DUI laws have been cobbled together over decades, and they are scattered throughout the state code. They are convoluted and difficult to enforce consistently, so I am proposing a sweeping overhaul and rewrite of our DUI laws. In addition to consolidating and simplifying the DUI laws, I also propose substantive changes to allow for blood draw warrants on first offenses, limiting look-back windows that benefit repeat offenders and allow folks to get repeat DUIs without them counting as additional DUIs. We want to give prosecutors the tools for people who have 5 or more DUIs and other improvements. These are steps that we can take together, and there will be many others. As much as tackling substance abuse is a priority for me, our message is as much about calling others to rise to the challenge and carry on the work in their own communities, from our largest cities to our smallest towns. And let me just add, all of this conversation should start with shedding that bias in our society that individuals with substance use disorders or co-occurring mental health disorders are, for some reason, not worthy of our help, our care, or our love. That's not the Montana way. These are individuals who are deserving, and we must act to put in the systems in place to address the issue and to make sure that their needs are taken care of. And there is a role in that for all of us, for the public sector, for nonprofit organizations, for community groups, for everyday citizens, for businesses. So we need to get to work. And I know many of you have been invested in these issues. These individuals up here know so much about it. And Levi, I just want to say, you're my hero, man. I appreciate you being here and talking about your situation. We all need to hear it. It makes a difference, and so thank you. God bless you, sir, for what you do. Thank you for your dedication to your communities and to your state. Thank you for listening to me, and let's roll up our sleeves and get to work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney General Fox. Next up, I'd like to introduce our second speaker. It's Detective Dean Christensen, who is a 19-year veteran with the Missoula Police Department with 25 years of cumulative law enforcement experience. He's currently assigned to the Detective Division with an emphasis in prescription drug-related cases and crimes against persons. He began his law enforcement career in Cheyenne, Wyoming in 1990, which is before I graduated high school. He then moved back to Montana in 1996, where he worked as the chief of police in St. Ignatius, Montana for 3 years. I'm just saying that because he doesn't look that old. He was hired by the Missoula Police Department in 1999. I graduated college that year. Detective Christensen has been awarded 5 certificates of commendation and a meritorious achievement medal while in detectives. He has been a task force officer with the Drug Enforcement Administration for the past 5 years and with the Tactical Diversion Squad, and is stationed in Missoula at the high-intensity drug trafficking area. Please welcome someone who I have a ton of respect for because law enforcement is a big part of my family, Dean Christensen.
I was told I can't move around very much. Normally I like to walk around. I'm trapped up here, so I know how it feels being in the back of a patrol car now. I just feel totally uncomfortable. So does Clint, though. He knows what it's like to be in the back of a patrol car, too. I can't talk about why, but you know what I'm talking about. No, I'm just kidding. No, he wasn't. So I appreciate every one of you for being here today. Thank you very much. You guys are the backbone of the city. We're just one small division of this city at the police department, and my job is even smaller than that. So it's all of you that we're counting on to help us, not only help you, but help your fellow community members here in Missoula. So I'll explain to you why. But first, I need a little audience participation. So I don't want you to say anything about yourself or anybody you care about, but I want you to raise your hand if you know somebody, personally or professionally, that has struggled with substance use disorder. If you can raise your hand for me. And just keep them up for a minute, and everybody look around the room. Look at all your fellow city business owners and check this out. Put your hands down. No, I'm just kidding. So think about that. So a lot of people in today's society think, oh, it doesn't happen to me. So that meth user downtown by the bridge, that's not me, that's not my friend, that's not my family, it's nobody I care about. So it doesn't affect me, so I'm just gonna keep on driving, I'm not gonna worry about it, right? Because I just go day to day and do my job and see my family and take care of my business. But as you can see, when you raise those hands, this problem affects all of us in one way or another. And it's a terrible thing. So when I first started doing this, on the prescription side of it, learning about the opioid problem, the meth problem, things like that. Before that, I'd been in law enforcement a long time, and I arrested murderers, I arrested rapists, I arrested burglars, and it was your normal criminal activity, right? It was your normal kind of person that kind of fits that profile for the most part. But then when I started doing this job, I started arresting doctors, I started arresting nurses, I started arresting police officers, because addiction. I don't know how familiar everybody is with addiction, and I hope you don't have to be familiar with it, but if you can help people who have this issue, please do that. Because I'll tell you, that one little pill, that one little white pill is very strange. You would think it's not a big deal. But once a person has that addiction problem, which now they call substance use disorder, because we want to be more politically correct, and that's fine, just a lot more words for me to remember. Once that happens, it takes over their whole life. You would think, how do they not take care of their children? How does that child end up in a cold car in the snow while their mom goes into a meth or a heroin house or goes to a doctor to try to steal pills and lie about their ailments so they can get a prescription for pain pills? You wouldn't think that would matter. Or somebody that's gone to school, somebody who's obtained a master's, went to school 3 times. I don't know why it didn't take the first time. I don't know why the Attorney General had to go 3 times, but just kidding. 34 years. Where were you on that time, Clint? No. I'm just So think about that. You've got a family, or you've worked so hard to get where you're at in life. You've gotten those degrees. You've applied yourself. You've spent money and time and effort. And then what happens? You throw it all away. Not intentionally. I can guarantee you every person I've ever dealt with has never said, you know what I want to do? I want to go to school. I want to have a family. I want to have all these great life experiences. Then I want to get an addiction problem, substance abuse, substance use disorder, and then throw away everything. Nobody says that. Nobody wants to have that happen in their lives, but you know by the show of hands that people do that. It's something you can't control. And some of those people you hire or you don't hire. And so the purpose for us to talk to you about this today is to take that chance, right? We want you to take that chance, and I get it. It's a risk. It's a hard thing for a business owner to go, I'm going to take that opportunity. I'm going to trust this person because inevitably, more times than not, they disappoint you, right? It's just like your kids. My kids, now they're 26 and 20, and I'm a walking ATM, but other than that, there are some times of disappointment, but do I stop loving them? No, and we keep trying, right? We keep trying to teach them and educate them. And so it's the same way with these people. They're having this issue, and Levi's going to get up and talk to you about some real life issues. And I'll tell you, I met him a couple months ago. Now we are the best friends anybody could be. And he's going to share some ugly things with you. Listen to them. It's not an exaggeration. It's not a shock and awe effort on Levi's part. He just wants to impart to you how bad things can be. So listen to him when he comes. It's going to be an awesome presentation. I really respect him for that. Because it's not easy to share our personal things with people, right? I would tell you some personal stories, but I would shock you. No, I'm just kidding. So how do we fight that? How do we fight that in our community? How are we doing it here in Missoula to say, hey, we need to do something because we recognize there's a problem? The police department 8 years ago knew there was an epidemic for opioids. OxyContin was a big thing back then, and it was killing people left and right. The company who made that drug had to change that drug. Why do you think this company decided, you know, I'm going to change how OxyContin's made because it's killing people? Why do you think they cared about who it was killing or how it was affecting people's lives? Yeah, because if you make hydrocodone, lower tab, Percocet, whichever, that's made by a lot of different companies. But OxyContin was one company. And so everybody that was dying and their family members, their surviving family members and friends were coming back to one company. So what they had to do? They had to reformulate that and fix it so people couldn't manipulate the drug anymore and cause themselves to overdose. They did fix that. And now I don't see OxyContin really anywhere on the street really anymore. There's other drugs, of course. And it's in our community. So when you see things that happen in Los Angeles, Detroit, Houston, you think, oh, that's happening in the big cities. We don't have it here in Missoula. That's wrong. That's a lie. We have just as much of a drug problem here in our community that they have in the big cities. Granted, it's by population, so we have a little bit less activity, but we still have the same problems. So don't be blind to that. And I know some of you have seen it, and we're trying to address that issue, but it's obviously an uphill battle. This war on drugs that everybody's heard for years and years, it's the longest war I've ever seen. It's not working. So we're trying to do other things. So what did we do here in Missoula to try to combat that problem and address it? One was to put me in the position. I was the first prescription drug detective in the city that was working this area just solely for prescription drugs. That was 8 years ago. And now we have an office of DEA agents, ATF agents, county deputies, state officers, FBI. We got everybody. I mean, every agency you can think of, Homeland Security, that has any law enforcement responsibility, they're in our office now, and we're all combating this problem. So we have a huge office to address this because we see this in law enforcement. But what does law enforcement do? We arrest people. We enforce laws, right? So initially, when I started doing this, my mantra was always, I can't arrest my way out of this problem. I can't arrest everybody that's misusing drugs or stealing drugs from other people. I just can't do that. It's not going to be effective. So what do? I try to educate people. That, to me, is the number one priority. It's not always the most popular priority in law enforcement because, obviously, guys want to put handcuffs on people and they want to drive fast. We're really not going to a donut shop, I promise you. When they're driving really fast like that, it's fun. But, yeah, no, we're doing it for a reason. And so people who are already adults or even in high school who have experienced and have become problematic for themselves and for the community with substance abuse, I can't reach that. I don't think I can educate that. We can help treat, we can help train, we can help educate, but I wanted to get to them before they got to that point. So we partnered up with a lot of different agencies. Missoula's kind of a, for the state of Montana, I think Missoula's kind of a spearheading group of people. We've worked with Department of Health and Human Services. We've worked with Missoula Underage Substance Abuse Prevention, also Forum, Boys and Girls Club. We've even worked with the Clark Fork Water Coalition, because we don't want this stuff in our water system either, right? We don't want to flush. We don't want to throw pills down the sink. So what do? We work with other agencies. We team up, and it's called an RX committee. We've been meeting for years. We've been trying to get the education out to schools, through the university. That's another group, and I know my friend Leah's in the audience. She runs this for us. I know I'm forgetting a ton of people. She knows everybody. But, you know, from the university pharmacy board to the students that work there and go to school there, getting this message out to the kids, it's been I think it's made a difference in our community locally to show other communities like Butte, Bozeman. I hate to say Bozeman, sorry. Ugh. Bobcats. Yeah, sorry, any Bobcat fans in here. It is getting to be a beautiful town. It's starting to be my second favorite town. But we're going to try to educate those communities now with what we know and share our knowledge and our coalition of people that we've worked with, because it can't be just cops. It can't be just doctors. It can't just be healthcare workers. It can't be just nurses. It's got to be a coalition of people. And I see a whole room of 270 plus people with a coalition that are all sitting here because they all wanted to come here one thing. And that's, how do you protect your business? How do you protect your family? How do you protect your friends and your community, right? And participating with us today and donating or helping or ideas or whatever it is, so that we can get the education out to people from the school-age kids up to the adult-age people. That's what's going to make the difference. I promise you guys, it will make a difference. So please, I'm sure my time's getting close, right? Please help us with this. Help yourselves with this, because that's what matters. It's all about community, and we live in a very eclectic community, but this community always comes together. Some way, somehow, they always make things work, except for championship trophies lately. But we're working on that too. So I appreciate your time. I thank you for it. Please listen to the other folks. They're awesome people. And just thank you. And I appreciate Chamber of Commerce letting us do this. Thank you very much.
He actually had a few more minutes, but I wanted to cut him off before he made fun of me again. Our next speaker is Katie Mahi. She is a partner at Garlington Loan & Robinson and chair of the Employment Law Practice Group. Katie counsels her clients on employment and labor issues and has clients representing nearly all industries in Missoula and Montana. Katie graduated from the University of Montana, go Grizz, with high honors, receiving a bachelor's degree in psychology and sociology with an emphasis in criminology. She attended the University of Montana Law School, where she graduated with honors. She is also a native of Lewistown, Montana. Her husband, Matt, is a wildland firefighter and native of Stevensville. Their recreational activities include golfing, rafting, camping, and spending time with their children. So, Katie.
So I offer a little bit of a different perspective today because I'm going to talk to you in my lawyer capacity about what you can do as employers if you have employees who have an addiction or have a substance use problem at work. I'm also different because I'm the only one that has a PowerPoint and I can't see it, so I don't know how it's going to work, but we'll just go through it. I want to first talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, which are legal disclaimers. This presentation is not legal advice. It's just a very general and limited overview of some of the laws that could potentially be implicated when you're dealing with these type of issues. You should not rely on this outline in making legal decisions or employment decisions, and although some of you are my clients, this does not create an attorney-client relationship. So when I started thinking about how to approach this talk, I wanted to talk first about kind of some of the laws, and I apologize for this, there we go, that are impacted when we start thinking about we have an employee who has tested positive drug test, or who has an addiction problem and it's starting to impair their performance, or whether to hire somebody who potentially has an addiction problem or is a recovering addict. So the laws that we're going to talk about kind of go through, and this is not all of them, but the ones that you need to be thinking about are the Wrongful Discharge from Employment Act. Montana is the only state in the nation that does not have at-will employment. We need to be thinking about discrimination type laws, which include the ADA and then the Montana Human Rights Act. Now, a lot of people don't know, but the ADA only applies if you have 15 or more employees. But in Montana, that really doesn't matter because the Montana Human Rights Act is essentially similar to the ADA and applies regardless of size. We are also concerned about retaliation and whistleblowing concerns. What has happened recently? Are there any potential concerns with that? We're concerned about Family Medical Leave Act. Again, that'll typically only cover covered employers. But it is a concern that you want to be aware of. And then we are also concerned about the Montana Workforce Drug and Alcohol Testing Act. And this is one, if people have heard me speak before, I can speak on this for several hours at a time, which I won't do to bore you to death today. But it is a big one, and it is one that is very critically misunderstood by most employers. And most employers do not have compliant testing policies. And that can be a big deal. The last thing, and the last statute that I was thinking about before we came is the lawful use of a lawful product during non-work hours. Again, this is a statute most employers don't even know exists, but there is a statute in Montana that says employers cannot discriminate against their employees for the lawful use of a lawful product during non-working hours. So that's just something to be aware of. So when I tried to come up with the way to talk about this, because there is so much information and I could talk for a very long time, I thought it might be helpful to address it as though an employer comes into my office and tells me they have an employee with an alcohol problem or a drug problem or something along those lines, and what kind of questions am I going to ask? And what kind of things, as the employer, do you need to be prepared to answer, and do you need to have thought about ahead of time? So the first one I'm going to ask you is, what information do you know and what have you confirmed? I'm going to want to know, what documentation do you have? Do you have a positive drug test? Do you have performance documentation? Do you have a PowerPoint presentation? Luckily, I got it right here. Do you have somebody saying that they believe this person is impaired? Is the person who is saying that it is impaired, have they been trained in reasonable suspicion testing, which they have to be under the Workforce Drug and Alcohol Testing Act? Is this person that you're dealing with in recovery, or are they still using? And that matters for purposes of discrimination type laws. If you have somebody who is actively still using, they are not considered disabled. If you have somebody who has gone through treatment and is on the wagon, they can be potentially considered disabled, and then those discrimination type laws would apply. And I'm going to ask you, have you engaged in the interactive process? So what have you talked to your employee about? How have you documented what you've talked to them about? What sorts of things are they telling you? And what sorts of information do you have from them? Do you have doctor's notes? Do you have medical documentation? What do we know so far? The next question that I'm going to ask you is, what do your policies and procedures say? Do you have a policy that addresses this? And if you do, you better follow it. Because if you don't follow your own policy, that can expose you to liability for a wrongful discharge claim. I'm going to ask, are you a covered employer for FMLA purposes? How many employees do you have? How many employees do you have in a 75-mile radius? How many hours has this particular employee worked in the last preceding 12-month period? What do your leave policies say? Does FMLA run concurrently with paid leave? Do they continue to accrue paid leave while they're on leave if they need to take a leave of absence for treatment? What sort of EAP programs do you have? Those are employee assistance programs. Do you have something available to your employees now? Is this person going away to treatment? Does this person need inpatient? Do they need outpatient? Do you have free counseling that you offer under your EAP programs? Is there a free number that they can call? What do your disciplinary policies say? Are your disciplinary policies clear about what you can do in the event that you get a positive drug test? Are you self-insured for health insurance? Now that sounds like a weird one, but it is a question I'm going to ask. I purposefully avoid dealing with ERISA policies like the plague, but we need to know that because you need to be concerned if you're improperly discriminating against somebody who you know is going to have a high expense on your self-insured plan because you know that they're going to have to go through treatment. Do you have a drug and alcohol testing policy? And I am going to spend a little bit of time on this one because it is sort of a niche area for me where I get pretty excited about it because nobody seems to really have a good grasp on what that means. So my first question is going to be, is your policy legal? And half the time it's not. So my sample policy for a compliant drug and alcohol testing policy is 12 pages long because there are so many requirements that the Montana Workforce and Drug Alcohol Testing Act puts on employers in order to test. So my first question is, what employees are you testing? And everybody's immediate response is always, everybody. Well, you can't. So you can only test people who occupy those positions in which involve the performance, supervision, or management of work in a hazardous work environment, which includes where testing is mandated by law. That's aviation, DOT, those sorts of things. Operation of work in proximity to construction equipment, industrial machinery, or mining activities. Handling proximity to flammable materials, explosive, toxic chemicals, or other similar substances. A security position. A position affecting public health and safety. A position of a fiduciary responsibility to the employer. Or a position that requires driving a motor vehicle. So if you are testing anybody who does not fall into one of those positions, it is probably not lawful for you to test them. So what does that mean? Well, the Montana Workforce Drug and Alcohol Testing Act doesn't have any individual grounds to sue. You can't bring a private cause of action under that. But what it does impact is when you're looking at a wrongful discharge claim or those type of claims, if you are firing somebody or terminating somebody because of a positive drug test, you better make sure that the policy that you did it under was lawful. My next question is going to be, what do you want to do? Employers come to me all the time and they want me to tell them, you know, here's this problem, what do we do? But what I really need to know is, what do you want to do? If you want to try and rehabilitate this person, if this person has been a good employee, we're going to go in a totally different direction than if you're done and if you don't want to do it. And what we're going to do if you're done is we're going to try and minimize liability and figure out what we can do lawfully. If you want to rehabilitate the person, it's going to be a different conversation, but it's going to be similar in that we're going to try and minimize your liability risks moving forward. So the first question is, do you want to discipline the employee? And this raises a whole host of other questions. Do you want to do a performance improvement plan? What kind of discipline do you want to do? Is it a verbal warning? Is it a written warning? Do we need to do a performance improvement plan? Do you want to go ahead and move forward with termination? What does that look like? What are the options if you go that way? What are the options if you do a performance improvement plan? One thing that comes up a lot with addiction or alcohol problems in the workplace is a last chance agreement. They can be very effective tools to help that employee be able to get the help that they need and come back and maintain their job, recognizing years of service and that the employee had been a good employee before and trying to help them get back on their feet. A last chance agreement is basically what it sounds like. It's an agreement where you lay forth all of the grounds that you have for the disciplinary action, including and up to termination, and then you essentially give them a last chance. And usually there are conditions within the last chance agreement. You can put disciplinary conditions in there. You can put business conditions in there. For example, you won't get a raise for the next year while you're under this agreement, things like that. You can also put in the requirement that they go to treatment or attend counseling or that they complete treatment. And maybe your question is, they haven't done anything bad at work. They just came to you, they have a problem, and they're just being honest with you that they have a drug or alcohol problem. So then we're going to be talking about, do you grant leave? Can you grant leave? How long is the leave? What policies do you have? What potential protected leave is out there? And those sorts of questions. Then we have employers who want to actually help arrange for the treatment. Is that something you want to do? Are you going to offer to pay for part of it? Are you going to pay for inpatient? Are you going to pay for outpatient? Are you going to assist them pay for a couple counseling sessions a week? How are you going to integrate them back if you're bringing them back into the workplace after? How are you going to accommodate their need to go to counseling or to go to meetings during the working day? What kind of things have you thought about as to what this looks like once the initial problem is done? It's really going to be a risk-benefit analysis. We're just going to go through and say, here's what the risks of keeping this person are. You know, especially in a situation where you're talking about somebody who maybe drives as part of their job. What are your risks of keeping somebody who you know to have a drug or alcohol problem? They come back, what liability risks are there? Are they even insurable under your auto insurance policy? I'm also going to ask you how you've treated others in the past. Has this issue come up before? If so, what did you do? Who was it? How long ago did it happen? How did you treat them? How are we going to move forward? And again, that's not just because I'm concerned about you doing what is the fair or right thing. I'm concerned about discrimination or retaliation type claims if you're treating people differently. So I'm going to ask you, are there protected class status concerns? Race, age, nationality, disability, all of those things. We're going to go through all of those. I'm going to ask you, is there any chance that they could bring a whistleblower claim? Have they filed a workers' comp claim recently? Have they made a complaint to OSHA? Is there anything out there that we need to know about that they could potentially claim retaliation? And I'm going to ask you, what are your leave options? Does the person have accrued vacation? Does your sick leave policy cover treatment-related absences? Do you have an unpaid leave policy? Do you have a sick leave policy? Do you have a vacation policy? What do your business needs look like? Is this somebody that you can deal without having for 30 days, or is it somebody that you need somebody in that role? And how are we going to do that? Do we need to do an undue hardship analysis, which has to be an individualized assessment to determine whether or not you can actually grant this person the leave that's being requested? And my last question is probably my biggest and most important, so of course it's not on my PowerPoint. And that is, do you have employment practices liability insurance? Because you should. And why I'm asking that is that changes our risk-benefit analysis. Instead of looking at 4 years lost wages and fringe benefits, instead of looking at what would be, a potential claim under a discrimination claim, we're going to be, what's your deductible or self-insured retention? What do we know is your guaranteed risk at the outset? And what decisions are you going to make with that? Are you going to try and offer a separation agreement? Can you get a separation agreement for less than your deductible? Can you get this person to make a claim so that you can trigger your EPLI insurance? All of those things are really important for you to be considering when you're going through all of this. So if I can leave with one piece of advice, it would be, if you have this issue, really think through all of your policies, all of your procedures, and are you adequately protected in the event that this leads to some exposure, some liability exposure. And make sure, if I could just tell everybody 100 times, make sure you're documenting things, make sure you have EPLI insurance, and make sure that you're treating people fairly. Because at the end of the day, if you treat people with respect and you treat them fairly, you're not going to spend nearly as much time with me as you would otherwise. So I'd like to thank the Chamber for asking me to come speak today, and all the other presenters.
Thanks, Katie. I think everyone in the room would agree that you provided a lot to think about. And I think it's obvious she could have spoken about that for a lot longer. The last speaker that I get to introduce is, no offense to the rest of the panel, but my favorite one. Not because the rest of the panel is lacking in some way, because they are all excellent, but Levi's just different. And in a great way. For many of you that have been around the chamber, you would know that we get kind of a specific type of people that walk through our doors. The day that Levi walked through the door was a different one. But I quickly learned that Levi is an amazing an amazing man, an amazing father, and just an all-around really great guy. So to give you a little background on Levi, he's a Missoula native, an alumnus of Lowell Elementary, Hellgate High School, and the University of Montana. In case you didn't notice, we really like our Grizz here. After losing his dad in 2000, Levi turned to drugs and alcohol. His use quickly escalated to daily abuse, and in 2005, he checked himself into treatment in Great Falls with the help and support of his mother. He also struggles with depression, PTSD, and other mental health and health issues, many of which are a direct result of drug use. He's a single father of a beautiful 11-year-old who's just awesome, and whose mother has been absent for her entire life, unfortunately, also a direct result of the disease of addiction. Levi has dedicated his life to helping people, especially addicts, find recovery. He works hard to help others better understand the disease of addiction by speaking locally and nationally, all while working a full-time job and being a single parent. He's the busiest guy I know, and also the most fun to be around. Welcome, Levi.
Well, I'm an addict recovering from the disease of addiction. My name's Levi. I'd like to thank the Chamber for giving me the opportunity to take the microphone in front of a lot of people. That's a risk. So, yeah, I don't have a liability thing, but y'all are in for it. So, I've had the opportunity to meet Tim prior to doing this. I was helping someone graduate through drug court, and I went to Butte, and I saw that he actually cared about addicts. A lot of people hear addict or addiction, and they think like street junkie or Poverello Center. Well, that isn't always the case. Like, as you saw, a lot of people raise their hand for, do I know an addict? And when I talk about addiction, I talk about alcoholism too. Like we put them all together. So, and if you like, some facts are, it's like, alcohol kills more people on earth than all the drugs combined. I mean, that's a fact that not everybody thinks of. They think junkie, heroin, like meth and all that, and alcohol is really devastating as well. Other facts include, like, if you have a parent and a grandparent that's an addict, you're 600 times more likely, 900 times more likely to become an addict. So those are things to think about when you pick up that first drug. Another thing I like to do is like I take a moment of silence and I think about that addict that's going to use for the first time today, not knowing that they're going to become addicted, that they're going to end up on this roller coaster ride of, like, which usually turns into hell. Not thinking that that's what's going to be the case. They think that, hey, I can just use once, my friends are doing it, this is going to be fun. Not knowing that, like one's too many, 1,000 is ever enough. We like to talk about that. We talk about that what's beautiful about being an addict is I used to have a lot of shame with that. Like, I'm an addict, like, don't look at me, or like, I can't tell people that. And like, once movie stars and shit became addicts, it became cool. And so now I can talk about being an addict, and people are like, that's all right, man. Maybe I want to do that too. So I don't really like to focus on the disease of addiction as much as I like to focus on the message of recovery. And that was brought to me because I went to treatment, as he talked about, and I ended up at a recovery center, like at a Alano type club. And the 4D club, we have it in town. It provides that safe environment for people like me to like attend meetings and to like find recovery and to meet other people that understand what it's like. As you heard, like, my life started off pretty great. I had a good, loving parents, and went to school. I like did all these really cool things, graduated, won state in numerous events, and but that didn't keep me from being an addict. Like, everybody, like, addiction doesn't discriminate. Like, from the old lady seeking a couple doctors to get a legal prescription to that junkie that's like trading themselves. And I turned into that person that was trading themselves at the end of the road. I didn't wake up. People like to ask, like, why don't you just stop? Like, that sounds horrible. Why don't you just stop using drugs? And I'm like, well, if it was as simple as that, I would have done it. And a lot of people would have stopped because no one wants to wake up and be like, you know what I'm going to have to do today? I'm going to have to find someone that's willing to abuse me and do whatever they want to me. And then I'm going to have to pay them for these drugs that probably won't work, knowing that I want to get high so I don't get sick, but to do it anyway. Knowing that it's wrong. Every bit of my soul or whatever it is like, stop. just stop. You're killing yourself. Why can't you just stop? Parents like, man, we just stop. I'm tired of watching you kill yourself. I'm tired of watching my baby die. I'm tired of, Mom used to have to hear the screams next door of what I was going through to get one more. And it wasn't about getting the kilo. It wasn't about getting pounds. It wasn't about this. I needed one more. I didn't care what it cost, what the expenses were to get that one more. I was willing to do anything. And that, at the end of my road, I ended up trading myself. And I'm not proud of that. This isn't like a shock thing or like a grandiose, look at me, this guy's just crazy. He does all this wild shit. Sorry, Kim. I have like specific rules about not cursing. And so this is a challenge. That's why this is like kind of scattered. And so to know that I had to like do these like self-deprecating things so I didn't get sick. Knowing everything in me was like, man, just stop. Like my mom being, please stop. What can I do? Why don't you just quit? Like we love you. You grew up in this great family. What's wrong? Like what's wrong? And not knowing I was an addict, not knowing that I suffered from this disease that is incurable, that we suffer spiritually, mentally, and physically from the disease of addiction. It affects all assets of our life. And so just avoiding being sick was the end of the game. Like I wasn't getting high, the drugs stopped working, but knowing that, like people are like, what's withdrawal like? And the best way I describe what like trying to explain what withdrawal is like would be like me trying to explain to you what it's like to be pregnant. Like I can't do that, and a woman can't explain to a man what it's like to have a kid. Well, me explaining what withdrawal is like, it can't be done. Like there is nothing more horrific and horrendous than going through withdrawal. It puts you at the level where you'll do anything. But so to backtrack, like I went to treatment after like something, I had a moment of clarity, I had like this little window of opportunity where like, enough's enough, like I gotta do something. So my brother and I went over to my mom's house and like, I need help. She's like, I know. What do we do? Well, it's because my dad died, she had life insurance money, luckily. And that was supposed to be used to send us to college. And she thought it would benefit us to save our lives. So she used the money to put us through treatment. I'm very lucky. Most people don't have the opportunity to pay for treatment. So because I advocate for a lot of people and help a lot of people like try to get clean or whatever, I've got to go to treatment centers and I see these people get this courage, like, hey man, I want help. Like, what can I do? And they go to a treatment center and like, okay, that's great, fill out all this paperwork, which is super daunting. Most of it is hard to understand. I mean, if you're coming off dope and drugs, like filling out your social security number, which you probably lost or changed so you could try to get something from another doctor, is really difficult. And then they're like, okay, thanks for doing that. It's about a 6-month wait. And so, that thing is, and so then you've like had this little moment of clarity. You're like, okay, I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna change my life. I don't wanna die anymore. I'm tired of doing this. And then they're like, okay, come back in 6 months. Most people die. The majority of people that go through treatment, the recovery rate's like 2 to 5%. It's more like 2. Everybody that I went to treatment with in 2005 is dead. I'm the only survivor of my treatment center. And all treatment centers are great. You get into them you get out of them what you put into them. I mean, any of them are awesome. Montana, I think, struggles because we have very few. We have one in Butte, and then we have like a treatment center in Missoula that was it's like 5 or 6 years old. And but the way there's like special lists on these treatment centers. If you're paying, you get put to the front of the list if you're paying cash. Missoula's treatment center has 2 Medicaid beds. Most people that are struggling with addiction don't have no money. And so most of them are on Medicaid, which is like taking from like the system and stuff, all of our money's going to like help people. And so their list it's the 4th list. There's 4 lists. And so they're the last of the last. And so 2 people hopefully get to make it on this list where they might get help. And in the meantime, with this 6-month wait, they don't go back and they're like, okay, I'm gonna stay clean now. I'm gonna stay at home. They go straight back to the dope man's house and go back to what they were just doing because they don't know what else to do. They finally got courage. They finally believed in themselves, or someone believed in them just enough to give them that courage that they can maybe do this, and then it's all taken away. And it's not intentional. Like the treatment center isn't like, oh, good luck, we hope you make it, like, sorry about your luck. They're like, our hands are tied. Like, there's nothing else we can do. That's why it's so important for places like the 4D Club to exist, because in the meantime, in the intern, you can attend these meetings where other addicts like you know what it's like to dig on the carpet for stuff they know they haven't dropped, and like to like trade themselves and and make it out. Like, man, people are like, I know what that's like too. It's the attitude of empathy versus sympathy. Like, I know what it feels like to do that, and here's the way out. Other people, like I tell a lot of people this story, and they're like, man, that sounds terrible. Like, that sounds like a bad idea. But when I tell an addict that, they're like, man, I know what that feels like. And you're not alone, and I can help you through that. And so together, we can do what I can't do alone. These are like little mottos that I heard. I've been doing this for a long time because I care. Like, I don't make money for doing this. I have to take time off work. And but it's important to me that someone be a voice for people that don't have one. A lot of people like want to do something. Well, like, I don't know. An example is when I walk by people, I walk my dog. There's the dude, he was homeless, sitting in the corner or something. I had gloves, he didn't. I gave him my gloves. Because I knew what it was like. It's like the empathy. I know what it's like to be cold. I know what it's like to have bills that need paying that I can't pay because I'm buying drugs. And so, like, we go through a lot. And what's really beautiful about this is, like, when I first met with Tim and Dean, I'm like, oh, the DEA's here. He ain't caught me yet. Yeah, they got a good record there, not finding me. But I like to interrupt, I guess. It's like, and so he was talking, he's like, oh, this and that, the war on drugs. I'm like, whoa, there ain't no war on drugs. As you heard him say, the war on drugs is over, that we've lost. So it's about helping people find a way out. Like, it's about informing people that there's a different choice. Like, what can we do to help other people? And so whether people use or not, that isn't what I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about if you do choose to use and you want to find a different way out, that there's recovery available. And I approached Kim a while ago because I care. And I know people listen because I look a certain way and act a certain way. So, but me and Kim have a great relationship. She knew me before I became addicted. She watched me through my journey of addiction, and then she saw me get clean. And I'm like, man, our community needs something. Our community is really special. Like, I love Missoula. I won't leave Missoula because it's a safe place I can raise my kid. I do it by myself. Like you heard Clint say, my daughter's mom hasn't been part of her life. She left when she was 8 months old and has only seen her 4 times in her life. And it's all because of the disease of addiction. Like we talk about, you'd heard Tim talk about how the addiction robs parents of their kids. Well, it robs kids of their parents too. Like, it isn't just one-way street here. Like, a little girl, I mean, she's here with me. She's like, she's my hero. You want to talk about someone that's been through it? Like, we talk about things like leaving a kid in the car to go score dope. I got clean. I'm like, I'm not going to use. I'm going to do my best. And I made poor choices. Like, Annalise was one of the little girls that waited in a car while I went and scored dope. I'm not proud to say that. That's not like something that a parent wants to come up and a podium in front of their peers and be like, hey, so this is what I did today. You know, like, that's not a great thing, but it's what the disease told me to do. The disease says jump, I say how high. And so she waited in a car on a winter day so I could go get dope from a guy that I used to trade myself to. And so that's how insidious and how severe the disease of addiction is. That's why this dilemma, this epidemic, whatever you'd like to call it, it needs addressed. And it needs people like you to come together and just talk about it. Like, we take the taboo-ness off of addiction when we're like, okay, we can have a conversation about this. It becomes dinner time conversation. Like, here we are gathered together because we know something's going on. We might not know how to fix it, but we know that there needs to be a solution, and what are we going to do to help? And so we're all given this great opportunity to, like, make a difference in another person's life. I've helped a lot of people, and there was this homeless woman I drove to Butte and I grabbed out of an abandoned house. She's 52. I brought her to Missoula. It was a long story, but she's clean today. And all it took was one person just caring just that little bit that helped that person stay clean. And now she's got an opportunity to, like, have a beautiful life and be a part of her kid's life. And so it's just really an honor, because I didn't go to Kim being like, I want to speak in front of all these people. This will be so cool. Like I didn't. I wanted to be faceless. I wanted just to help behind the scenes and build something I wanted to get like a community organization together to build a recovery center or help support the one we currently have until we can get one that's more fitting, because addiction is a growing problem. Our meetings are growing. Like we have more attendance than seats in our meetings a lot of the time. Our club has 2 parking spots. We have meetings, we have 3. We have 3 parking spots. I mean, wow. And every business around their toes. And it's not against them, but they have a business to run. And it's really difficult when you have that moment of clarity or like you get that desire to, I'm going to change. So I heard about these meetings. I'm going to go check one out. And you drive up, if you have a car, and you see that all 3 spots are full. And so you drive right by. And most people die. They go back and they use one last time and they don't make it. And so that's why it's so important for us to come together and to build something that people can that have simple access to. The fact that we're talking about it is such a beautiful thing because now we know that there's a place to send people. A lot of people didn't know the 4D Club existed. They didn't know that there was a place where meetings are held where addicts can help each other. And that does exist today. It's so I'm just really blown away that y'all would take time out of your day to come and support something like this. I have a great employer. They're here. I work for Public Services. My brother worked there. He got clean because of all the stuff she talked about. He went and he's like, I got a problem. And they're like, okay, we'll hold your job for you. And I'm not saying they'll do that for everyone because I got my legal shit that I can't talk about either, whatever. So don't quote me on that because someone might try to hold a job for someone and help them too. And so they helped them. And he's been a great employee for like 16 years. And then they gave me a chance. I mean, most people see me and they're like, man, wow. And they're like, but they listened to me. They saw a person. They didn't see what living through addiction has done to me. All these, the tattoos, the earrings, all these were just self-defense mechanisms to keep you away from me because after I lost my dad, I didn't know how to deal with loss. So if I kept you away, I wouldn't get hurt. And it took a lot of counseling from someone here to teach me that. So I'm just grateful for the support I have. I mean, I have amazing people in my life that care about what I do. Like Catherine and Paul and Kim and Don, like these people care. And it's amazing what like a simple thing, like my employer does that, like how's your day doing? How's your day going? Like what can we do to help? They know I need to attend meetings, so they're like, okay, we'll work your schedule around it so you can attend those meetings because they've realized that if they support someone and help them stay clean and do whatever it was that got them that job, that they will have a good employee. I'm not saying I'm the best, but I'm saying I show up and I do the best I can every day. My best may differ from day to day, but it's still my best. And they still understand and they care. And I mean, it's amazing what like a simple pat on the back does for somebody. It's amazing what hold the door for someone like at a restaurant does, like, and a smile when you're walking by or how's your day? Like those little things make a world of difference. A lot of people see me and don't think I'm gonna be talking about this mushy stuff, and they're like, oh, he's so sweet, he holds the door for people. But I was taught like to do very simple things. Treat other people like you want to be treated. Like the addict on the street didn't wake up like was talked about. Know what I'm gonna do today? I'm gonna destroy my life. Every day. They wake up knowing that they got a sickness that needs to be fed and they don't know how else to feed it because other things aren't available. So they do what they've always done. And until now, because I believe now is a great turning point, like we're at a crossroad where we can make a difference, people will know things are available. Like we can make a difference, we can help other people get clean. We can find that the disease of addiction, like they say the old lie's dead. Like once an addict, always an addict is no longer true. Because we have a simple message that we write on, that an addict, any addict, can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use it, and find a new way to live. With that, that's all I have.
I told you he was the favorite. There are a couple of small little business items before I get to the few minutes we have left for questions. The first thing is that there is a card on your table that's kind of a call to action card. Gives you an opportunity to say, hey, I'd like to do something. I could help out with in a variety of different ways. If you wouldn't mind filling one of those out, if you feel like getting involved, we'll have our fabulous red coats at the door on your way out. Just drop the card in there with them, and we'll take it from there. The second thing is there is a Missoula Chamber of Commerce kind of thank you card. It's a blank card on your table. Kim's holding one up down here. Levi mentioned the Fort D Club. They've gone through some struggles lately, but more importantly, we want to take a minute to thank them for the work that they do with our community. For those that don't know, the Fort D Club hosts a lot of different anonymous groups that are helping folks through their journey to recovery. If you wouldn't mind just taking a minute, jotting a quick thank you for what you do for our community, a quick word of thanks in there. We're going to collect those as well and give those to the folks that run that club, and just let them know that we see them, we love them, and we're really appreciative of the work that they do. Now, with that, I'll get to a few questions. We only have a few minutes, just because Levi had so much to say. That's all right. I think everyone would agree it was worth it. The first question I have for the panel is, and Hannon, if you wouldn't mind bringing up a couple of the extra mics, how can we as business leaders in Missoula help participate in proactively addressing the drug abuse challenges in our community? So I'll just kind of hand the mic down.
Well, first of all, you mentioned an organization, a group, or a place that is trying to help, and we need to support those types of groups, organizations, institutions, and oftentimes it takes money. Most of them are set up as nonprofits, 501c3s. Montanans are generous. They care about people, and one of the ways you can do that is to donate. And so I would say find out who's helping who, what are their needs, or whether it be money, resources, volunteer help, whatever it might be. Find out what your gifts are, what makes you tick, and how you can be a part of the solution, and then go do it.
We're all going to answer that question?
If you want.
What he said? No. Just get involved. Seriously, everything the Attorney General just said is true. Everybody has their own time and talent, right? So whatever that is for you and your business, please take that and run with that. Just get involved, please.
I would say look at what you have for employee assistance programs. Look at what you offer under your health insurance plans. Do you offer free counseling? Are there a certain number of counselings that employees can have? And be prepared to help employees when they have those questions. Let them know what resources are available to them through the plans that you have.
I don't know. I think you should just notice employees. I mean, take the time to get to know them. And if you see them struggling, ask what's going on. Like, it's very simple to be like, how's your day going? Not everybody's going to struggle with addiction, but sometimes people are going through something where they just need a hand, or they just need to know it's going to be okay. So just, like, treating people like people and acknowledging them and letting them know that they matter.
All right. The next question, I think Levi might have more of an answer for. If someone in the audience needed help, where do they go to get it?
I mean, that's kind of a broad question. If you need help, I mean, Google and then find like answers and see like what resources are available. I call Catherine Cosma. She's a counselor. She has her card available later. No, like find out that there's a 4D club, and our meetings are normally open, so you can attend the meeting and ask for help and we have a bunch of IPs, a bunch of pamphlets, a bunch of different information that can help you direct someone to a resource. So, I mean, finding the resources is the hardest. You can go to the chamber now, and they'll now know of resources. I think there's a number 411 you can dial, 211, and that gives you like a list of resources. The Poverello Center has a great packet that has all the resources in the community available, so things like that.
All right. The next question is for you, Attorney General. The question is, you mentioned that you're proposing a bill that includes an alternative formula for funding drug treatment. Since currently the overwhelming majority of treatment programs are funded by federal money, what's the alternative formula?
I think that actually what I was talking about was education, prevention, and then treatment courts. In terms of treatment itself, the big issue in this legislative session that y'all ought to be engaged in is whether or not to reauthorize Medicaid expansion. I think that's a very political issue, obviously. And I think, as Levi mentioned, not everybody has insurance, or a mother who has a life insurance policy that unfortunately came because her husband died. You know, beyond that, I don't know of anything in the legislature that's on the table for funding treatment. I don't know if that answered the question or not.
All right, the next question, and I'll let anyone who wants to take a stab at this one go. How much of prevention is focused on drug awareness versus dealing with dysfunctional family conflict, working with others who are different from them, basically equality? Don't everyone jump at once. Anyone got an answer?
I can, if I understand the question, I can take a crack at it. So prevention and education, I see those both as hand in hand. I think, as I mentioned earlier, start with two things. One is that, and I think most of the speakers mentioned this, that substance use disorders don't know any boundaries. So it's, as I said, the young and the old, men and women, you name it, we're all susceptible, whether we're rich or poor. So I think you need to understand that this isn't somebody else's disease or someone else's crisis. This is our disease and our crisis. And heaven forbid, it might affect you. So I think we start with that. And then the other thing I mentioned is there's no one that isn't worthy of our love and support and our help. Absolutely no one. Yeah, I don't care if they're, look different than you, if they have, and there are some that look different than me. They have a different sexual orientation. I don't care what it is. They're all worthy of our help, love, and support. And, I've seen things posted on Facebook, and probably I shouldn't look at Facebook, but just the other day we posted something on my official page about the bills I'm bringing, and someone said, these people are doing this to themselves. This is a decision they made. I'm not responsible for that. I shouldn't have to pay for that. That's them. That was their mistake, not my mistake. Well, they don't understand the physiology and the reality of substance use disorders. And we do call it that for a reason. Addiction to many people connotates you're worthless. You're not worthy. You screwed up. It's not my fault. It's your problem. Substance use disorder, it's a disease. It's not something, as Levi said, that you woke up in the morning, decided to get rid of everything good in your life. And so I think those are the two main things in terms of prevention and education that we have to start with, is that we're all susceptible to getting this. It is a disease, and we're all worthy of love, support, and help. That's my 2 bits.
All right, that's unfortunately all the time we have for questions. The only thing I will say before I welcome Will back up for his closing remarks is that there are a number of questions in here that are pretty specific to employment legal questions. So I would encourage you to reach out to your own attorneys or give Katie a call. I'm sure she'd appreciate the business.
One of the things Katie said was make sure you get the liability policy, and that's very important, folks, because you want to get your attorneys paid.
I'm definitely outmatched in the wit and humor of most of these panelists. Levi, Katie, Dean, Attorney General Fox, and Clint, thank you for your time, your stories, and your talent today. The Chamber of Commerce is committed to not only just talking about these sort of things, but moving the bar in our community. Right after this panel and chamber leadership will head to a separate meeting in which we'll continue to discuss the issues and try to actually draw some fruit out that we can pass along to our business members. And so roll up the sleeves, as Attorney General Fox said. I want to once again thank our title sponsor for today, Neptune Aviation, as well as our silver sponsor, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Montana, and of course, our visionary members, First Security Bank, the University of Montana, Northwestern Energy, Windfall, and Southgate Mall. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Certainly enjoyed it. Hope you did as well. And be safe out there on the roads. Thanks so much for being here today.